y'all, I'm back, and today I'll be walking along the beautiful Lachine Canal, and I thought while I'm strolling along on this beautiful summer day, I might ask y'all all a question. That being, is anecdotal evidence useless? So to better clarify what I'm talking about, let me start with an example. Let's say that you're sitting around preparing your morning cup of tea, and I come up to make myself a bowl of cereal or whatever, and I see that you're drinking tea, and I say, hey, you probably shouldn't drink that tea because the last time I drank tea, I got a really bad stomach ache, and all I had to drink was that tea, so that probably was the reason. And if tea gives people stomach aches, it's probably not that healthy to begin with, so maybe you should have coffee instead. But maybe it's not that simple. Maybe I ate an entire cake after I had the tea. Maybe I'm a coffee salesperson, and I'd love if everybody switched to coffee instead of tea. Maybe my tea had milk in it, and I'm lactose intolerant, and I don't know it. Any of those could be factors in the story. But all you've been told in my little anecdote is, I had tea made me sick, therefore tea bad. And I want to stress that I'm not necessarily lying in this scenario. I mean, some people do lie because they have some kind of point to press, but I might sincerely believe what I'm telling you. Now, if you've ever had an argument with a stranger on the internet, and I think we're all guilty of that at least once, you've probably heard an anecdotal argument, or you've tried to convince someone with an anecdote. And if you've ever been in those situations, I think it's really easy to think of anecdotes as something inherently unscientific, or something with no real basis in reality. But again, I don't think it's that simple. Scientists have always relied on metaphor and stories to get across complex ideas. And then you have the social sciences, like anthropology. If your job is to research people and try to understand them, how do you do that? Well, you ask them. Anthropologists are storytellers at their core. That's right, Storytime YouTube. We beat you to it.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy Branislaw Malinowski coming at you again from Papua New Guinea, where we've been recording for the new album. We were supposed to finish up this week and get back to my mansion in Austria-Hungary, but then we were stopped by the actual Australian cops, the real deal. And they said they're not gonna let us leave. Apparently there's a war or something happening. But don't worry, because I'll be recording everything on this beautiful island paradise. So make sure to smash that like button and smash that subscribe button.
So while our boy Malinowski was trapped in Papua New Guinea, he kept doing his field research, which primarily consisted of participant observation. And I've talked about participant observation on this channel before, and I've jokingly called it hanging out. And at its most basic component, that's what it essentially is. You go to a place, you sit around and talk to the locals, and you ask them questions, and you write down what they tell you. And in that way, you can gather qualitative data. Now, most research can generally be divided into one of two categories, that being quantitative or qualitative. And yes, those two words are very similar, and I've seen PhD level grad students screw up which one they're talking about. So don't feel bad if it's a little confusing at first. Now, what is the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data? Well, we can think of quantitative data like this big, rusty grain silo. It's all about numbers and figures and statistics. And we can think of qualitative as this little pink house. Qualitative has to do a lot more with stuff that can't be defined by numbers. Now, the two aren't mutually exclusive. If I'm doing quantitative data, for example, and I do a survey, I might leave a couple spaces where people can just leave comments or suggestions for certain topics. And if I'm doing qualitative data, I might want to know how many times a week do people go to church, or how much money do people spend on lottery tickets. The two methods also have their drawbacks. Quantitative data can be quite useful in many circumstances, but if you've ever taken a course on statistics, you also know how easy it can be to manipulate. And people are really trusting of numbers, so if you can spout some number at them, even if it's not really methodologically sound, a lot of people are willing to believe it. And qualitative data doesn't really fit on a bar graph or a pie chart, and you can get really misleading answers if you ask leading questions or if you don't ask the right questions. So anecdotal evidence does have a place in qualitative data. There are some things that just can't be explained with numbers. But the important thing to remember is that one anecdote is one data point, and that one data point can be affected by a lot of outside factors. We talk about this concept a lot in anthropology, and the term that we use for it is positionality. Now, I've talked about positionality quite a bit in my video on objectivity, but to put it simply, positionality is the position in which you view the outside world. If you're a little confused by positionality, here's a more literal way of thinking about this. We can both see this bridge that's in view, and we both know that there's a bridge here. But you get a very different view if you're looking at it from here, or if you're looking at the bridge from here. So if we think of positionality that way, we can both be looking at the same thing, yet perceive it entirely different due to our positions. So your positionality is affected by who you are, and that can be parts of your identity that you can't really change, like your age, your race, your gender, but it also might be affected by your background. If I'm trying to study professional League of Legends players, just for an example, I'm gonna get a totally different reaction out of them if I ask them if they think the latest update totally nerfed their ADC, or if they think the jungler that was just added is gonna totally be able to gank their bot lane, than if I walk up to them and say, "How do you do, fellow gamers? Can you tell me what a nexus is?" So what am I trying to say with all of this? Do I actually think that anecdotal evidence is useless? Well, no. I mean, I think that'd be a pretty hard position to have as a cultural anthropologist, but I do think it can be dangerous. Humans are social and empathetic creatures, and when someone tells us a story about their lives, we want to believe them. So if I don't think that anecdotes are useless, but I do think that they're dangerous, what can you, the person watching this video, do the next time that you hear an anecdotal argument? Well, if you're thinking like an anthropologist who is analyzing qualitative data, the most important thing is to listen to multiple stories. When you hear one story, think about, what have other people told you about this? What specific things about this person versus the things that other people have told you are different? And is there any kind of quantitative data that you can look up to back up these stories? Another thing to keep in mind is the positionality of the person who is telling a story and yourself. What do you have in common with that person? What don't you? What biases do you have towards them? Or what biases might they have about the subject? What would make you less likely to believe their story, or more? Listening to someone else's story was really powerful. There were perspectives I hadn't ever considered, or experiences that I didn't think were possible until I sat down and listened to another person talk about their life. And if you'll excuse an old cowgirl, a colorful expression, if you don't hold the reins tight enough on your horse, you're gonna get taken for a ride. That's all I have for today. See y'all later. You're gonna just chill out in the background, seagulls? Okay. Because I'm just doing this with my seagull buddies.